We're live.
Hello, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second ever Read in Color Book Club live show. I'm very, very excited to be hosting with Mina here today to discuss The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. I am super excited to discuss this one because Mina and I were sort of talking about our feelings and we have lots of thoughts. So it should be an interesting discussion. And I know a lot of you had interesting thoughts as well in our discussion on Fable. But to start, I would love it if everyone can leave me a little emoji in the description. If you finish the book, leave a heart emoji. If you haven't finished the book, leave a smiley, just so we can sort of see who's read the book, how many people have read the book, and then we'll get into discussing the book and all of that. And a lot of you are sort of trickling in now, so I'll just leave this banner up while Mina tells us a little bit about the book for anyone who is like, what is this live show about? What is this book?
Okay, so The Unbroken is about these two characters. One of them is a soldier. Her name is Terrain, and the other is a princess named Luca. And Terrain is basically a conscripted soldier. There's like this empire, and she's from a colony called Kozel. So basically, she's this soldier, and she's forced to kind of go back to her hometown of Kozel and quell this rebellion. And so it's basically about her kind of with tortured feelings basically about whether she has her loyalty to her hometown where she's really from or to the empire that she now serves. And Luca, the princess, she's kind of trying to solidify her role as a leader so that she can get the throne from her uncle, who's kind of like holding it for her. And that's like the basic premise of the story.
Yeah, that was really good. You covered all the bases. And I feel like it's a very specific premise and story that I haven't really heard of, especially with like the two perspectives that we get, which I found interesting. I'm just looking through everyone's comments to see how many people have read the book. And it looks like a lot of you actually did finish it. There's a lot of hearts here. And then some upside down happy faces, which I feel if you didn't finish it. I would love to hear if there's any of you who started this or got a decent way through and had to, or DNF'd it basically because you just couldn't get to the end. Because I feel like that was a theme that I was noticing on Fable. So let me know in the comments.
Yeah.
So with that said, actually I'll leave this up while we're sort of talking about our general thoughts and people are rolling in. What did everyone think? General thoughts? We can sort of talk about maybe star ratings if we want to. I know I usually don't star rate stuff, but it's fun to discuss when like there's context put around it. I just don't like posting star ratings because I feel like people take it out of context. But I'll start. If I had to rate this one, I feel like I'm pretty generous with my stars, but I feel like I would give it like a 3.5 for me. That's where it hit. What about you?
I feel like for me, I'd probably give it like a 2.5. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I'd settle on.
Okay. What would you like to explain for us a little bit generally why you felt that way?
Okay. So I would say like my general thoughts are that first, I really think the pacing of this novel is just not that great. Because there are certain moments of like action and intrigue and stuff like that. But I just feel like the way the story is structured is like not the best. And I also can't say that I was a huge fan of either of the protagonists. I think that they were like really interesting theoretically, but I just didn't find them to be like the most compelling protagonists, I guess. So overall, it just wasn't as interesting and exciting as I hoped it would be. So
yeah, I totally feel that. I feel like I went into it expecting it to be a lot more than it was. And like you said, I feel like I didn't connect as much with the characters as much as I wanted to. I was expecting a lot more like action, like from the beginning and throughout. And as you said, like the pacing was just so weird at times. But again, I will say that I do feel like I enjoyed it a teeny bit more than say you might have, just because I really like the sort of historical parallels and the idea of like empire and colonialism and all that. Like I love that when it's explored in books. And I feel like that's just something I like to see in like fantasies and books, but like it's not something that everyone wants to see, so it just depends. So yeah, I feel like it's a book that you can feel very differently depending on what your preferences are. Some other ratings here: 4 stars, 3 stars, 4.5. Okay. 3. We have an opinion about the protagonists. Protagonists were all right, but Torine's mom was somehow more interesting. Ooh, yes. And I wish more fantasy was involved. I'm
I
not gonna
did
lie.
too. I
Yeah.
did too.
This one definitely felt like sort of like Game of Thrones in the sense that like the first book has like zero magic. Like I think it was sort of going for that
Mhm.
approach, which works sometimes, but I also feel like it just wasn't lively enough. What do you think?
Yeah. I really wanted there to be more magic as well. Like when they introduced the fact that like there's this magic that exists and like they're kind of cut off from their magic, I was kind of expecting like I don't know what exactly I
Yeah.
was expecting from it, but I wanted some more to come from the whole magical aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say here now before people yell at me, we are going to go into spoilers now. So leave now if you haven't finished the book. Come back and rewatch this when you have. But I'm excited for everyone who finished. Yeah, I agree. I feel like there was like a lot of hinting at like the magic, and I was hoping that it would play a bigger part, especially with this whole idea of like revolution going on
Yeah.
and how they were going to rise up. But I feel like there's a lot of just like talking about things that would happen and not actually anything happening, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel
Um, okay. Let's see. I do think my expectations affected my opinion because I did expect more action. 2, agreed. Oh, there's so many comments. They're coming so quickly. I liked how many layers there was to the protagonist, and I really enjoyed the politics. Oh yeah, this is definitely one that like was heavy on the politics, which if you're into that, I feel like you would enjoy this. But
Mhm.
I didn't really. Um yeah.
Yeah.
I keep it 3 stars, but I'm also generous with my star ratings. I also found the characters not compelling, wanted more magic. So yeah, that's like sort of a general consensus. For everyone here, I feel like that they, or a lot of people here, that they wanted more magic. Okay, so let's take a step back, I guess. Let's dive into specific aspects of the book. Why don't we start with like the basic structure of the book, like how it was told in 2 different point of views? Did we like a specific point of view more than the other? Did we like how it was structured? Maybe
Mm,
not.
I don't know if I could say that I liked one POV
Mm-hmm.
more than the other. I think
Yeah.
I felt like equally meh about them both, to
Okay.
be honest. Um,
Yeah.
but I do like that it was two very distinctly different POVs. You know, like they have a very different social position, and I think that that made for like interesting conversation and dynamic between them. So I do like the fact that there were two POVs, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I had a favorite. What about
Yeah. I would agree. I liked having the 2 perspectives because it made for an interesting sort of play between them. But I don't think I preferred one over the other. I think they were both um, equally hard to like connect to, and also both equally hard to, I don't know, root for at some points
you?
as
Yeah,
well, if that makes sense. Because I found what I struggled with was that at the beginning, and I understand the perspective that Terrain is coming from, and I actually really liked how her internal thoughts and like external perspective couldn't really match up, in the way that like she is this, Quasali native, but she has been forced into the Baladarian, army, and has become one of these Sands, and she finds a kinship in like her fellow soldiers, but she can't really connect to her homeland,
yeah,
because she hasn't been there and she doesn't know her family and all of that. And while that was like completely understandable and like the perspective was, it was like hard to sort of watch her, similar to the way that her friends are watching her and like, why don't you feel something for, your home kind of thing. But as she starts to feel more, I was like, yes, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you to, rediscover your home.
yeah,
But then on the flip side with like Luca, I feel like she was really compelling at the beginning, for me at least. She has like a lot of ambition and motive, but as we get later into her perspective, it's not that I didn't enjoy it less, but I found that I stopped drinking the Kool-Aid. I stopped believing her imperial mindset. And I was like,
yeah.
you're still part of the machine. You're still, you know,
Mhm.
part of what makes this situation horrible. And she makes her own efforts to stop what's going on, but it's all sort of serves her own personal interests. She wants to become queen. She wants
Yeah.
to take over the throne and all that.
Mhm.
I'm just going to go through some perspectives here. Lucas made me mad more, so probably most interested in that one. Okay, yeah, I can see that. At the beginning, I didn't like either of the characters. At the end, I liked reading from Terrain's point of view. I found her more interesting in the end. Yes, I do agree with that. She was a lot more interesting, I think, when she like starts to really like care for the rebels.
Yeah.
And do more with that. Equally bland. I like seeing different sides of the conflict, but enjoyed Luca's perspective more.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrain's journey of connecting to her culture while trying to ignore it really hit home. Yeah, I think that was a perspective that I saw a lot on Fable. Quite a few of you mentioned that you really connected to that aspect of her character and her journey, which I really enjoyed as well. I think that was like one of the highlights for me. I just wish that we had like the book had emphasized it more, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it spends a lot of time talking about how this revolution is coming and you know, Terrain struggles with it a lot, but I feel like the switch between her being against this revolution and being against, you know, working with the Khazali, and then the switch to her becoming a rebel was like very sudden and swift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I feel like you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like I understand Terrain's like mindset and her inner motive, but I don't feel like there was a lot of development. And I think that some of that comes from I don't love the way like the character dynamics are done in this book. And I think that the character dynamics are actually really important to kind of like displaying, you know, Terrain shifts and loyalty and stuff like that. Because like for example, her relationship with Luca and how there's kind of like this whole romantic undertone to their relationship. Like, I don't actually think that that's portrayed very well. I don't think that they have a lot of
Yeah, me
and
neither.
and so for me, I didn't really understand why Terrain felt so, you know, like passionate about Luca and about protecting Luca or so loyal to her. Like it was something that didn't fully make sense. And in that same vein, the story wants me to like really believe that Terrain cares so much about her fellow conscripts, but I don't feel like her relationships with the soldiers were that great either. And so it just was like, I don't know. I think that that's one of my main gripes with this story is that it keeps telling me that Terrain feels all of these like big emotions about all these different groups of people, which is why she's so conflicted. But I don't think it was portrayed very well or convincingly, at least.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like, as you said, like there was a lot of like telling, like, you know, she really cares for the Sans, she really cares for Luca or whatever, but I feel like the execution just like wasn't there for me. And same with like on the flip side, Luca caring about Terrain. I can see how she has this sort of rosy lens, and like this is where it sort of falls into that trope of like her being this, I don't know, like she is still serving her. That's what felt creepy about it. Like
Yeah.
that's what feels creepy about Luca in general. You know that Terrain is serving her, and even when she gives her freedom, it's still like, okay, but like this whole situation is caused by your imperialism. So
Yeah.
woman. So like I sort of understand her falling for her a little bit more, but even then she was just like so enraptured, and I couldn't completely believe that she would give up everything, turn away her forces and everything at the end just for Terrain, just because she liked and loved Terrain. Because I feel like that's what ends up being it in the end. Like she wants to save Terrain's life, and she feels like, okay, we're gonna leave and I'm gonna face my uncle or whatever.
Yeah.
Figure it out. I don't know. It just felt unrealistic.
I agree. I feel like most of Luca's like inner monologue about Terrain that's supposed to show us like how she feels about her is mostly kind of like a physical attraction. Like she seems to really talk about like being attracted to Terrain and about Terrain's like physical attributes, but nothing that would make me think that like she's deeply in love with her, in love enough that she would, you know, do these kind of big things that she does at the end of the novel. It just kind of like just wasn't convincing to me. It just really it didn't sell me.
Yeah, I feel that. And like while we're talking about sort of motivations and the unconvincingness, I think one of like the triggers for Terrain sort of changing her mind is when Thibaut dies.
Yeah.
But even that, I feel like we didn't, like, we see some interactions with them at the beginning, but nothing was convincing enough for me to be like, this is going to change Terrain's mind, who has been so like set on this one thing from the beginning, and thinking that she has been right this entire time to sort of work within the system to get what
Yeah.
she wants, so yeah, overall it's just unconvincing. But what I'm going to stop harping a little bit, and I want to talk about what we actually liked about the book. For everyone here, what did you find was the most compelling part of the book? What was your favorite part of it? Did you have a favorite character, whether it was like the main characters or side characters? What do we feel?
Hmm.
Do you want me to start?
I'm
I can
trying to
start.
think. Yeah, you can start.
I will start by saying that despite all of the relationships not feeling solid enough for me, I really, really loved Jagotai, or the Jackal, like Train's mother.
Mhm.
I thought the twist was really cool. I thought her character was just so interesting because she is so sort of horrible at the beginning, but we sort of see her soften a little bit towards the end. I do feel like her relationship with Terrain could have been worked a little bit more. We could have seen a little bit more of it develop, but I liked how complicated Jackal was as a character. Like, she is someone who had her child taken away, when they were very young, and she's sort of become completely hardened, and then she finds out that the child that she loved is now like a cog in the machine of the empire that has wronged her, and she sort of hates that. And I thought that she was so complex and interesting that way. And then aside from like characters and just general things, like, as I said, I love the sort of idea of the colonization and the empire and the whole structure of that. While many of the things that they do feel that didn't make sense to me, I feel like the general setup was really cool and how it mirrors sort of parts of history and stuff. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely really liked the rebels, particularly the Jackal. I thought she was just so interesting and complex, like you said. I liked the way that Luca's disability was handled in the book. I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Yes.
And I also, like you mentioned, I really like the themes of like colonization, and in particular, like how that impacted Terrain's mindset and the way that she viewed, I don't know, herself, and this idea that she could like fight inequality within the system. I thought that was like really fascinating because it kind of becomes obvious that that's not something that she can do. Like you can't fight for equality in a system that views you as less than. And so I felt like that was like a really interesting conversation that the book was having, and I did really enjoy that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way that Terrain sort of thinks about it and envisions it is so interesting, because she's always thinking about sort of the Sands and how if she can get promoted, she can care for the Sands a little bit more and all that. But then part of that is her trying to become more like Cantic, and her like idolization of Cantic was just so fascinating to me. The way that she wants to be more like her, and the way that she sort of throws away the entire Rebels plan and tells Cantic about it, that was insane.
That was so weird to me. It was just
It was
so,
pointless also. Yeah.
and I think that that's like one of my main gripes with Terrain as a character, I guess, is that I felt like she was often doing things like that. Just like very impulsive decisions that kind of didn't make sense to me. Like, what did she think was going to happen if she revealed this plan? She's like, she reveals the plan goes wrong, there's like this whole attack, and then she's like, oh my God, I never could have expected that this is going to happen. What did she think that the general?
Yeah, I know. That was definitely the stupidest parts of the book. I remember reading it and I was like, what is she doing? Like, we were going so well here. Like, things could have gone so nicely. And it was a weird turning point in the book, which, like, I feel like artificially moved things forward, because she's forced to leave Luca and, all of this stuff. But it just seems so stupid. I mean, part of it I feel like did make sense for Train's character, in the sense that like she is like loyal to the Empire. She thinks that she can be a cog in the system and make it work. But it's just like her thought process. Like, did you think this through?
Yes, exactly.
Did you really? Okay, I'm just gonna go through a few people's comments. I did want to go back to this. Yes, I really did sort of like how Luca's disability was handled in the book. And like it's not shied away from, which was really nice. I love seeing the found family that the rebels had made. Yeah, I also like Thibaut. He remind me of memoirs I've read from child slave soldiers. Oh yeah, that's very interesting actually. I don't know how much like research the author did for this book, but it seems like she has because it feels like it parallels a lot of history.
Yeah.
And I do like how Thibaut was constantly sort of poking Terrain at the beginning, trying to get her to think more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the scene where they fight. That was intense. That was probably my favorite. Oh yes, actually, I really like that scene. Though I'm assuming you're talking about the fight between Jackal and Terrain.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I
thought
love
this scene
that.
was really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
That one.
really cool scene. And I feel like it could have been like pushed a little bit further. I wish they had like talked or something afterwards, but
Yeah.
it was a really cool scene regardless. And just seeing them like dance around each other. And also you think that like Terrain has won because you think it's only one round, and then the next chapter you find out, oh no, it's like three.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. I liked Joshua and Arnon's relationship because it was so heartwarming to see their love for each other. I also really like their characters as individuals. 100%. These two were like my, heart of hearts faves. They were just so sweet, and like I just wanted to protect them because they were like the best characters and like most morally sound characters to me at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked him as well.
Yeah. And I really liked how Arnon is still alive by the end, and the way that she sort of sacrifices herself. Well, not sacrifices herself, but she does so much at the end. She's such a powerful figure by the end. And she's also the one who like kills Cantic, I think, at the end.
Hmm.
And I like Josh's character. I also love their relationship. I don't know if anyone's mentioned this yet, but I remember someone on Fable mentioning it, the way that they really loved how the queer relationships in the book were just like they just existed, like it was not a big deal. They
Yeah.
weren't coming out. It was a accepted part of society, which is also interesting in the way that Terrain and Lucas relationship happens. It's like not a scandal because like they're both girls. It's a scandal because Lucas just a royal and all of that, and Terrain is a
Mhm.
sand. I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah. I did like that as well.
Um, doo-doo-doo. Train's Mom the Jackal was so interesting. Other soldiers were pretty underutilized as well. Not like points about the colonization thing standpoint. Yes, absolutely. What did everyone think of Pruitt, actually? I don't feel like we touched upon her character. She's an
Early
interesting
on,
addition.
Pruitt was like one of my favorite characters, and I was
Mm.
really intrigued by her and Terrain's relationship because it kind of
Mm-hmm.
seemed like they were dating or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really, really interested in everything that they had going on. And I thought that Pruitt, just in general, she was a really interesting character. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I
Mm-hmm.
have like any fully formed thoughts, but I did really enjoy her. She was one of
Yeah,
my favorite side characters, I think.
she was interesting. I feel like she sort of falls into that character role that we see a lot, like sort of the ex that sees how the main character has changed and is telling them you've changed, but you're not
Yeah.
realizing it. Like
Yeah.
she is that character role, which like sometimes gets annoying and sometimes is like very useful. But I liked Pruitt as a character because she was just interesting by herself. Like as you said, they had a relationship at the beginning, so I thought that was interesting. I was actually surprised by it because I knew that the book involved some sort of sapphic romance. So, and I had assumed it would be between Terrain and Luca. So I was like, oh, she's already in a like relationship at the beginning. So I was wondering how that was gonna like play into it. But I also like how Pruitt sort of sticks to her guns. She doesn't let her relationship with Terrain sort of cloud her judgment overall, which I feel like Terrain and Luca do. Like she is very loyal to her stands, but also, her best friend dies, like Thibaut dies, and then she sort of holds up against Terrain.
Mhm.
And she's just not willing to just go along with everything Terrain says. I feel like
Yeah.
so.
I
Yeah.
really like I really like that aspect as well. Someone mentioned that they think
Yep.
that Pruitt confused them. She loved Terrain and then flipped on her so quickly.
Mm,
But I feel like that made a lot of sense because
yeah.
she just finds Terrain to be like acting strangely, and so she just feels like she
Mm-hmm.
can't trust her, and I think that I really respected that because I think that a lot of the things that Terrain does puts the Sands at risk, because like she's siding with the Royals, then she's siding with the rebels, and like all of this tension that Terrain's actions are creating is impacting the Sands really negatively. So I like the fact that Pruitt was someone who was always on the sand side first, and like that was her main priority, and she really like stuck to that no matter what, and no matter what her relationship was with Terrain or not, you know. So I like that about her. She was very
Yeah.
steady.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it can be like a little bit confusing going into it, but I do agree that I respect to the fact that she sticks to her guns and like, you know, stays on the side of the sands. And it also felt like she was a bit of a foil to Terrain in the sense that like Pruitt was what Terrain kind of wished she could be and should be,
Yeah.
but she wasn't. Because she was sort of conflicted and she didn't know what to do, which is what most main characters tend to do. At first I thought Terrain would end up with Pruitt or something. I actually had a moment later on in the book where I thought that something might happen with them, like they might end up together, and that like I actually, when we got to like the middle of the book, I actually thought that we would reach a point where Terrain would sort of realize that Luca is part of the machine that is oppressing her.
Yeah.
And fall out of love with her. Like I was sort of hoping for that narrative. I don't know why. I mean, I feel like, yes, there's redeeming qualities to Luca, but she's still part of the machine. And I was kind of hoping for Terrain and Pruitt to sort of find their way back to each other. But that didn't happen. Maybe it'll happen later. Who knows? We'll find out if we continue. Actually, Mina asked me this before we started the live. Would you guys continue with the series if, like, based on your feelings on the first one? Tell me in the comments. I would love to hear. Mina, please.
Personally, I would not.
Yeah.
I'm really a character person when it comes to reading anything, but particularly fantasy. And so the fact that I'm not a huge fan of any of the characters in this book just makes it so that I'm not like super compelled to read another one. You know, like I don't necessarily think it's a bad book, and I definitely see like why it has a pretty like loyal fan base from what I've seen like across social media, especially on TikTok. It seems pretty popular.
Oh, yeah.
So I do understand like why people really like it. And I do think that it has like some interesting plot lines and themes going on, but I just don't think I'll continue with it.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I think I am like on the fence about whether I would pick up the first one. It really took me a long time to get through this one. As many of you may have noticed, I took forever to finish this book. I like finished it like on the final day of 2021. And part of that was because like it was just a slog to get through. I don't do well with long books, even though I love fantasy, but I feel like it really needs to grip me throughout. So it was a slog to get through, but I am interested to see the potential of where the series could go. So I feel like based on maybe reviews of the second one and how that sort of goes, what people think of it, I might be tempted to pick up the second one. At the moment, I'm not like rushing to find out what happens next or anything, but I would be curious. Like, I feel like if someone told me like a detail about the second book, like, you know, this happens or like we get to see more of this, I'd be like, I would pick it up. So I don't know. It depends. Let's see some answers here. No, straight up. Okay. Probably not unless the second book got raving reviews. Okay. No, I also struggle with continuing finishing the series in general. Yeah. I will try to read the second one, but if I can't get into it, I'll DNF it. Actually, yeah, I might take this approach. I might try it out, and if it gives me the same emotions, I'll just stop. I would 100%. I'm interested in seeing how they rebuild their home and Terrain's growth. Actually, yeah, I am curious about that. I'm also curious to see the consequences of Luca's actions at the end of the first one, because she makes some big decisions there that I don't think she's prepared to take on. And I'm also curious to see just if Terrain's character growth will go further, or if this is as far as it goes. Especially if it's based on history. Now that I've had time to sit with it, I didn't really like it. I liked elements of it, but not worth devoting to a second one, to be honest. I think this is a solid debut, but I don't see myself continuing the series since it's not my cup of tea, too heavy on politics, colonization, not enough fantasy. Yeah, I can completely see that. This is one reason, though, I'm curious about the second one, because we get the fantasy and we get the taste of the magic at the end of the first book, which leads me to believe that the second one's going to have more, because Terrain has, you know, done this, you know, crazy magic, and they've changed the landscape of their, you know, country and where they live. And I'm wondering if she will delve into her magic, you know, try to discover more about it, try to train it. Who knows? Like, I feel like that would be an interesting sort of storyline, but I'm not sure because I feel like this one was so heavy on politics that's not gonna probably change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this comment really sums up how I feel. I just
Oh
don't
yeah.
think it's like necessarily my cup of tea. Like it's not the
Yeah.
kind of fantasy that I tend to enjoy. So I tend
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy fantasy that's like really, really magical and like whimsical, like the David trilogy. I don't know if you've
Mm.
but it's like very magical in terms of like the setting and the way that the world works and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like people flying around on magic carpets and stuff. So like
Yeah.
I like fantasy that's like really like that. Or I enjoy fantasy that's a bit more on like the violent side. Like there's lots of fighting and like
Mm-hmm.
action and battles and war and stuff like that. And I feel like this, like, you know, she mentioned, is very heavy on the politics and, you know, it's really interesting on a thematic level. But I just feel like it didn't have all the action or all the fantastical elements that I tend to enjoy.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
100%. On the note of like action, actually, you talked about like, a magical one, but also one that's like sort of action filled. Like I sort of went into this knowing that it was a military fantasy and expecting more military aspects, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't really realize that it was set in one place only. And I thought there would be sort of a la, the Poppy War with
Yeah.
battles and things happening and moving along. I thought more of that would actually happen. And I wonder if like that's going to happen in the later books once like the consequences of all their actions, comes to light and there's more war and
Mhm.
action happening. But I don't feel like, it gave me what I wanted, which
Yeah, that's exactly what I was expecting when I saw this described as a military fantasy because you
mm-hmm,
know, the Poppy War is like really specific in terms of stuff like troop
mm-hmm,
movements and like everything like that. And
yeah,
so I was expecting a war setting like that or a military
mm-hmm,
setting in that way. But this was like it's about an army, but the army are just kind of doing like guard duty things. Like it doesn't feel
mm-hmm,
like, you know, like epic scale battles or anything like
yeah.
that. So it was definitely not what I was expecting. I feel like the marketing misled me just like a little bit.
Yeah, I 100% feel that. And I also feel like I thought it would be a little bit more focused on the revolution aspect as well,
Yeah.
which is something that we don't really get until later. And I also feel like it wasn't very like a big swelling rebellion. It was just like a quiet little bit at the end.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I feel like expectations do really affect how people think of books. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I wanted to just go back and see if there's any other comments I want to pick up here. With that said, what did everyone think? I just want to like go back to some specific like plot points, I guess. Were there any twists that people found, really interesting or exciting? What did you think of the reveal about her mother? About the twist where Terrain, sells him out to Cantic. I think we talked about it a little bit. Do we have any thoughts about like any of the twists and turns and things? One thing I didn't actually expect, it's not really a twist, but I thought that Terrain would remain a soldier throughout the book, but we get that whole her getting framed and then going into Luca's employ and being her
Assistant.
assistant. Yeah, that was something I didn't actually expect, which I feel like is another misleading part of like the expectations that we had of it. Yeah, I just didn't see that coming. Like I didn't think she would spend most of the book just like being Luca's personal assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really shocked by that as well because I feel like there's so much that happens in like that first 100 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's
Yeah.
the assassination attempt on Luca,
Yeah.
and then they have that dinner. She gets framed. There's about to be a hanging. You know, it's just all like it's all
Yeah.
very dramatic. And then it just slows down so much after she becomes her assistant. And I definitely think that that was like that certainly was a twist. I really was not expecting that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the biggest twist for me was definitely when she sold them out to Cantic because
Yeah.
I still kind of can't make sense of it. Like I understand that she has this idolization of Cantic and she really feel like she has this super close connection to her. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't even understand. Like I can't even begin to imagine what she thought was going to happen when she
Yeah.
told Cantic about what they were doing. Like I just
Yeah.
couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
So
I agree. And I also feel like there was like a very much like a lack of build up to that point. Like things
yeah.
were going really, really well with her and Luca, and we didn't get like the seed of doubt, every now and then. that would lead to us being like, oh, she's probably going to betray her or do something stupid.
Yeah.
But then here we are. And there's many people who agree here. Train talking to Cantic is probably what ruined it for me. Yeah. I feel. Oh, I think I missed this comment before, but the author of this book said that she wrote it because colonialism is really told from the perspective of the colonized rather than the colonizer. And so they're interested in, I guess, the next book for that reason. And yeah, I definitely agree. I like that we got sort of both perspectives in this situation, and especially sort of Terrain's internal mind struggle. In terms of twists, I called Jackal being Terrain's mom. I was shocked and angry when Terrain sold out the rebels because she thought the Sands wouldn't have to go fight the rebels. Yeah, like the logic didn't make sense. But I also actually agree about the Jackal. I called it right before it happened. I was like, hang on a sec. Something doesn't seem right. So that was like a good twist in my opinion because I called it right as it was happening. So that's like, it was foreshadowed well enough. But yeah. I just feel like I wish more had been done with that, at least. Was not surprised Terrain sold them out to Cantic. Okay. So, we have another comment here. I think, Jordan, if it goes, Raybird duology had a good balance of fantasy and politics while questioning empire and reclaim the throne tropes. Oh, interesting. That's a good recommendation for another fantasy by a Black author, if you guys are looking for one. It is on my list to read. It's a YA fantasy, though, for anyone who's curious.
Yeah. It's on my list as well.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, that was in terms of twists. Finally, what did we think of the ending? Just general thoughts. We talked about it a little bit, but I just want to hit that point. Is it a good ending? Was it expected? Not expected?
I don't know. I don't know how I felt about the ending.
Yeah.
I really can't say that I enjoyed my reading experience with this. So honestly, once I finished, I just was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that it's
done. Yeah.
So I don't even know. Know if I can like fully describe how I felt about the events of it. But like it was okay. What did you think?
No, I totally feel you on that. One of the things I find interesting about reading for this book club is that or reading for like with other people, I find for myself is that when I read by myself, like if I'm not enjoying it, like I'll immediately DNF, I'll stop, like two shits given. But when I know I have to discuss it with other people, I try to give it like the benefit of the doubt and I try to enjoy it more. So I definitely felt myself doing this with this book. I feel like if I had been reading it by myself, I probably would have DNF'd it like ages ago, like probably 100 pages in. But because I knew we were going to discuss it, I wanted to actively engage in the story. So I was like, okay, trying to feel stuff. And like, I did feel stuff. Like I was, into the story, but yeah, I was kind of glad when I finished. But the ending I think was interesting and surprising. Like I liked that we got that hint of magic at the end. And that Cantic dies and that Luca sort of pulls out the army. That was all some really interesting developments, which like has a nice setup for the next book, which could have some cool consequences. Let's see what people said. Too quick and didn't make sense. Okay, yeah. I did find the like invasion of the army compound kind of confusing and like all that was going on because I think Cantic and Luca figure out their plan right before they execute it, and so they're all captured and shit hits the fan and everything. But I did like the build up that before that where the rebels are like scaring the Validarians and like
I really like that as well.
Yeah. Like when they're putting out their tactics, that was cool. And I wish that like we got more of that part of the book,
Yeah. Because it was interesting. That was interesting. Like I feel like the rebels, they don't really do a lot except like threaten Terrain and then have conversations about like, oh, like we're gonna do this arms deal and like stuff like that. Like, they were always having like all these conversations. So it was really exciting to me to see the rebels actually like engaging in some action. And I really wish that there was like more of that.
Yeah, I feel like there was like just too much build up, not enough action, and then like when we get to the action, it just didn't pay off. Agreed. Honestly, just happy that I had finished the book.
Yeah, pretty much how I felt.
So the situations leading up to it would slowly convince Luca that she was on the wrong side, but she didn't, and her turnaround was too abrupt. Yeah, Agreed. Wasn't really sure what was going on by the end.
I feel the same.
But also the part where Luca all of a sudden changes her mind made me mad. Just quick turning. Yeah, I think that's a general consensus. Just like not enough development for all of us, I think. But yeah, that's about how I feel. I think we hit all the points. I know some of us like enjoy the book more than others, and I hope that those of you who enjoyed it didn't feel like we were sort of dragging on the book. I do think it had its like good qualities, and I'm excited for those of you who are excited for the next book because I do think it has like potential. But I definitely think this is one that, like, depending on your taste in fantasy and your reading style, it can either be a hit or miss for you. But yeah, that's about like all I have really to discuss. I think this is an interesting discussion. We had like cool points, and I'm also glad that we have had a book now that like wasn't as good, because I tend to just pick books that I really like and like will just rave and, you know, be excited for discussions, and I feel like that's not that interesting all the time. So I'm glad we had like a, you know, we didn't actually like this discussion for once. So yeah, we'll see more of that. I've tried to like mix up the picks for future months for all of you guys so that they're not all completely in my taste. They're slightly outside of it sometimes. So hopefully that will be fun. And yeah, that's about all I have. Do you have any like final thoughts about the book that you want to share, Mina?
No, I think I got it all out.
Yeah, you summed it up.
Yeah.
That's all it gets for a 2-star read, I feel. Yes, thank you all so much for joining us today. This was a fun discussion. For anyone who gets to see this afterwards, I hope you enjoy the discussion. Let us know any extra thoughts you had on Fable, where we're discussing the next month's pick, which is, I don't have it with me, but it's 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. It's a YA fantasy inspired by the Wild Swans fairy tale, and it's also got like East Asian mythology thrown in there and mixed together. It seems really cool. I haven't started it yet, but if anyone has started it, you can start discussing on Fable, which is linked below. And yeah, that's about all I have. Thank you, Mina, for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we will see you in the next Reading Color Book Club discussion. So thank you for joining us. And bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.